1970, and I've lived in Hinkley since 1974. Never been represented. And never been.
Yeah, I'm enjoying this. Yeah.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, everybody. We're glad you took time out of this beautiful, sunny, warm summer day to come here. This has got to be the dedicated coming out today. So we appreciate your being here. And let me start off our festivities with a invocation. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. Visit us a day of a winter wonderland. Hopefully we will be able to enjoy most of it from the inside. We are gathered here with all of our friends and neighbors to perform stewardship toward our nation. And we always remind ourselves that this nation, unlike others, was born of a recognition of you as our Creator, the source of our life, our liberty, and all of the things that we enjoy. Give us the strength that we need to perform this stewardship well, the perseverance to see it through, and the wisdom to choose the right course. Thank you, God. Amen. Bridger Woods, would you come up here? I would like you to, I'm going to be drafting you. We lost a scout some while back that was able to give the Pledge of Allegiance, and we have a new one. By the way, right after this meeting, he will be involved in the Pinewood Derby, which is why I look kind of like a mechanic. So we'll be rushing off. And come right over here, please. Left hand for the microphone, right about there, and this one. And I'll get over here and back you up. Where's the flag? All right. Go ahead, Bridger.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Great job.
We do have a future. If we can keep it. Oh, and by the way, since you piped up, John, I don't know if you've got any more of those buttons, the Obama-ized buttons. I think they're fabulous. You ran out already. Well, you got a place to sell more if you want to. At any rate, before we get too far down the road, I'd like to recognize our elected officials. Well, most of them are also candidates. But first of all, Congressman Bob Gibbs. I think most of you are familiar with him. And let's see, who else did I see back here? Elected officials, Nancy Abbott.
And I don't have to put up signs this weekend.
That's right. She is an elected official that is not a candidate. All right. Any others? Steve Hamley, County Commissioner, and he is a candidate. Did you want to say a couple, something about your campaign, Steve?
I won't use the microphone, but I'd say thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity. Love meeting with this group. Obviously a good group. Looking forward to Bob Gibbs talk about all the great work he's done as a congressman, and just so glad that we have the potential of having two congressmen that are both Republicans representing Medina County.
I agree with that one. Okay, Tom Miller, would you like to say a few words for us, running for sheriff?
Well, I'm running for sheriff in Medina County. I appreciate any support. I really came here to hear Mr. Gibbs speak today, so any support is fine. I'd like to hear you speak here.
Yeah, and Tom has some of his cards on the back desk. I'm sure he'd appreciate it if you could take a few and help distribute them. And Jason Stevenson, running for county commissioner.
Yeah, thank you. I don't need the microphone either. Most of you already know me. I've been to a number of these meetings and met with a number of you in other venues. I'd like to report, I suppose, that support for our campaign has been overwhelming, actually. Everywhere I go, people are very excited about what it is we're trying to accomplish. I've given away way more flyers than I thought I would, and a lot of signs and things like that, and a lot of that's come from this group, so I'm very appreciative and certainly grateful. And I would like to second Steve's sentiment that having two Republican congressmen here is a great opportunity for us. I hope it happens. I hope we take advantage of it, and I'm looking forward to hearing Congressman Gibbs speak. Thanks for having me.
Any others I might have missed?
Yeah, well, actually, I keep getting robocalls for another candidate, but I wanted to mention that there is another candidate here.
Oh. Yeah, thanks. I'm running for State Central Committee, and I'm also an organizer of that. Scott had to do most of the setup this morning because Seth Morgan was calling me on my cell phone, talking about the lawyers we were talking to just yesterday. Last Friday, the State Central Committee had a vote on whether to change their own rules to exclude anybody from State Central Committee that had not voted in the 3 prior Republican primaries. Well, we got the word about that out in advance, that would affect veterans, it would affect young people coming out of college, it would affect new residents coming into the state like Carl Rowe, as well as Operation Chaos voters. So they added an amendment to the amendment that excluded veterans, young people, and recent immigrants, but it still got rid of the Operation Chaos voters, some of which are still around there. The people that voted for Hillary in 2008 just to stall the ticket. At any rate, they did pass that by a 29 to 28 vote, but as a bylaw, it requires 30 voter votes. Even so, the parliamentarian changed his ruling before the vote, which is it requires 30 voter votes, and then he ruled that it only required 29 votes in order to pass. So
He deemed it
yes,
passed.
the parliamentarian did say before the vote that it was going to require 34 votes. When they voted, they got 29 votes, and he changed his ruling that it only required 29. Well, I'll tell you, it is that kind of fishy stuff going on down there. So now you know why we're talking to lawyers.
Is it just, yeah, like nothing filed yet?
No, they have not filed anything else. And they may not. I mean, that's pretty blatant. At any rate, yes, Janie.
How do they parse out that group?
Like including only.
All right.
Right. Well, it's inconsistent with state law because all these people have already qualified through the boards of election. They're already on the ballot. Voting has already been occurring. But the idea is when they get voted, certified, walk in their booths, take their seats, they'll be denied by party votes.
Oh my gosh.
So we have a number of legal avenues to pursue on that. But I just thought it was a remarkable vote last Friday. Of course, maybe it was a week ago Friday. And we're talking about attorneys to essentially challenge that. So that's why Seth was calling me this morning. And, it's just a constant desert. You wouldn't believe what it's like in the hot dog factory watching hot dogs being made. Anyway.
That's a good one.
Can we put that on the book?
Question, do we have any new guests, first-time people for today? We have one,
Yeah.
two, okay, we got a couple. we appreciate your brave souls coming out on a day like this for your time,
It was a
first time.
lengthy drive from Brunswick Hills.
Oh, very well.
It was a lengthier drive from the Summit County line.
And I bet Bob had the lengthiest drive of all, I appreciate
that's
that,
right.
Bob. So, anyway, we have a big tent here, everybody's welcome, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, we got a large percentage of all three. We're all independent, we're all conservative, we all believe in self-governance. We are permitted a variety of views from the podium, not all of which we share. So we do like diversity of opinion, we do require that it remain civil. If you haven't signed our sign-up sheet and got on our email list, please do so before you list. Anyway, checking the time here. Lisa, what do you think we ought to do? Announcements first, and then Congressman, or?
That'd be fine.
All right. Let me just whip right through here. There's a whole bunch of things going on in February. I mean, it's just astonishing what all is happening. But Buckeye Farms is having their Buckeye Bash this evening, 6 o'clock in Columbus. If anybody wants to drive down there. Monday evening, this is also another short fuse item. Congressman Renacci will be speaking at Medina High School at 6:30 Monday. Conversation with the congressman. Naturally, he would like a few of us to show up in support and ask good questions. Ohio Christian Alliance on February 18th has a freedom luncheon with Rick Santorum in Columbus.
What's that? When?
February 18th. Okay. Herman Cain, Joseph the Plumber Rally will be held on February 24th in Rocky River. And there's going to be a fundraiser for a regional tea party. It's going to be held at Cuyahoga Falls Riverfront Amphitheater on tax day. Lisa is in the process of getting Quinn and Rose to be the featured speakers. Good job, Lisa. And they're going to be holding a fundraiser on February 28th at a Dog and Suds. They sent us some tickets to sell, but somehow or another the tickets went to our old address, the old headquarters, and the forwarding mail hasn't quite made it through yet. So if you want to be involved in that fundraiser, just let Lisa know, make a donation, we'll make a note of it, make sure it gets to the right place, and figure out how to get the tickets to you. All right, let's see. Anything else? I think Dick Hill had an announcement about HSUS.
You can come up there because the remote mic
This was in the Farm and Dairy magazine last week, and as you know, in '09, the Ohio Farm Bureau, with the help of a lot of people in the state of Ohio, got the legislation passed to create the Ohio Livestock Care Board. The board was created. They created all the governing rules for livestock care in growing and processing and transportation. Recently, and then the self-appointed president of the Humane Society of the United States, Wayne Purcell, partnered with the United Egg Producers last year to create some federal legislation on egg producers. They have gotten U.S. Representative Kurt Schrader from Oregon to introduce House Resolution 3798, Egg Products Inspection Act, and they got two representatives from California to co-sponsor the bill. If it passes, will eliminate all the work that the Livestock Care Board created, and it will become federal legislation. So, Bob, if you don't know about that, please get all your cohorts and fight as good as you can to. There you go. Thank you.
Yes, Nancy.
Along with that, the Humane Society of the U.S. and PETA anti-dog breeder bill going through, to create another huge federal bureaucracy to, control the breeding of pets and dogs. I don't know if they're calling it paws now or pups. They've been going back and forth. Doesn't matter. It's a Humane Society thing to stop and control and allow federal agents, if you have intact dogs, can allow federal agents to come into your house. Okay? This is, yeah, okay?
Yeah, it's a shame we can't expose that organization. I understand they have these ads, really string pulling ads that raise billions of dollars, at least millions of dollars. And very, very small amount of that actually goes to health, or to animal care.
1% of
1%.
Humane Society of the U.S. money goes to actually shelters. 1%. That's it. That's a
Actually,
fact.
it doesn't go to shelters, it goes to euthanasia.
Well, it goes, yes, shelters that use, yes, yes. There's horror stories. We could go on for hours of horror stories of what they do.
You didn't know, their prime objective is to do away with animal agriculture in the United States and we become a vegetative state. That's their prime objective. It's on their website. If you remember the Conklin Dairy Farm with the dairy calves and the dairy cattle and the guy in the pitchfork? Well, they just created another a film on 2 hog farms in Oklahoma, and I'm waiting to see. I'm interested in how that turns out because I think it's all accurate. So,
Are radical environmentalists worse or better than radical vegetarians?
The KKC is working on it, and I put some ads, when they show all these dogs, what they're trying to do is to show, military and police working with dogs that were bred to do that, and then kind of just fade out and say, this is what you're working for. The loss of purebred dogs shows the dogs herding sheep, and then the dog just kind of, this is what you people are working for, that we'll no longer have those dogs to do those jobs. So hopefully they can get that going in response to the nonsense.
Right. Okay, that pretty much is a good segue into introducing our congressman, giving us an update and an outlook. Congressman Gibbs was our state senator for a long period of time, and we appreciated his service there. Then he got elected Congress in a district that did not include Medina. We gave him farewell, hope to see you again sometime, and now he's redistricted back in. So we're glad to have him back as one of our congressmen. Bob?
Here, so far back here, so I'm going to get a little closer. I love that vegetative state. That's a good one. And your Obama Lives, that's pretty good too, because I had to sit through the State of the Union, what, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. And I'll tell you, I loved it when he said, no more bailouts. Yeah, well, he's the king of bailouts, I mean. And then the other part that, well, there's a lot of parts in there that were very interesting, but the one where he said that since the wars are winding down in Iraq and Afghanistan, that's the Overseas Contingencies Fund, he's going to say, we're going to take that money and we're going to use half of it to pay down debt, and the other half we're going to put to education and infrastructure wherever it was. And, you know, I don't understand how that works because it's all borrowed money. So I guess he's going to take out another credit card to pay the credit card. I mean, we're borrowing 42 cents every dollar we spend. It's just incredible to me to think that you're going to take that money. And then here's what's really dangerous about that kind of thinking. This last year we approached 25% federal spending with our gross domestic product. Okay, it should be down 18, 19, under 20%, where historical levels should be. This is the first time that happened since World War II. World War II, it got up to 25%. Of course, we had one major war effort, but after the war ended, that plummeted, okay? Well, the problem we got now, you can shut down the war effort, shut down all that, and it doesn't plummet because it's all going to entitlements and bailouts and all the other nonsense. We've all been in office a little over a year in Congress, and there was 87 Republicans that got in there. Now there's 89 because we picked up 2 seats. We picked up the Wiener seat, which no pun intended. that was held by the Democrats since 1920 something. Incredible, and we picked up another seat out in Nevada. So we have 89 now. And so the freshman class is historic, because we're fairly majority, and they do have some clout. But the number one thing, we're concerned about was deficit spending. We're piling up a mountain of debt. And so the first thing we did in January in Congress is we cut our own budgets. We've got to lead by example, not go out there and say no more bailouts and go bail everybody out. So we cut our own 5% and another 6% during this fiscal year. We've cut and it turns out we've cut the overall House operating budget, committees, everything well over 10%. And at the end of this last year in December, my office, we returned over $100,000 in addition to those cuts back to the U.S. Treasury. So kind of lead by example and do the right thing. Of course, one of the biggest things we had to start out with last year was continuing resolutions of CRs. Because the past Congress under Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid, that's all they would do is CRs, which is a terrible way to run anything. And so we had to deal with that. And we tried to put, and the only problem, and here's what a lot of people I don't think understand, all last year when we're doing all that stuff, except for the budget, and CRs and all that, we were only had the ability to address discretionary spending. And the problem is, discretionary spending is only, I don't know, about 20% of the total spending. All the rest of the spending is on autopilot. It's the entitlements, it's other mandatory spending, it's interest. And that's going like this. And when it's all said and done last year, we did get the discretionary spending cuts down to 08 levels, which would be the first time since World War II there was actual real cuts, not just cuts in the growth of spending. Now, I've got a lot of problems. I got this baseline spending thing. I got some other issues. It's just unbelievable. And us freshmen, we introduced a bill here a couple weeks ago. It's called the Honest Budget Act. And it would do away with all the gimmicks. And I can believe that this has gone on for Congress for probably all our lifetimes on both sides of the aisle. They're all guilty of it. Playing the shell game, moving money from here to there, playing all kinds of gimmicks. And one of their biggest gimmicks they play is, okay, we're going to cut spending, we're going to eliminate this program, cut that spending, and then they, instead of bringing it back in, and Congress taking hold of that spending and make it so it's a real cut. In the past, they would reprogram it, or they would go spent some other area, and then they would cut it. They would still count it as being cut, even though they took from this pot and spent it over here. That kind of nonsense has to stop. And probably the biggest thing last year, I think, that we got accomplished out of the House, I'll get to that in a second, but was to cut cap and balance. We cut spending, this is our budget, the so-called Ryan budget, it was the House Republican budget. We cut spending over 10 years, $6.2 trillion. We capped spending at, I think it's right around 19% of the GDP, and we passed the balanced budget amendment. Now, I'm convinced the only way to get our fiscal house in order long-term is the constitutional balanced budget amendment. They went through grand bargain haulings and some other things, and they might have worked for a short time, and then what happened, you can see where we're at, over 15 trillion in debt. And of course, these things go to the House, go to the Senate. The Senate doesn't do anything. And the cut cap and balance is a prime example of the Senate not doing anything. Here's how it's supposed to work. When one chamber passes a bill, sends it over to the other chamber, they should have hearings on it. Bring in people, have testimony, public, be open, transparent, accountable. And then if they don't, obviously they pass the bill. Obviously they could change the bill and pass it. Another thing they could do, they could actually gut the entire bill and put their plan in, pass it, and send it back to the House. They didn't do any of that. You know what they did? They didn't take a vote on it. You know what they did? They tabled it. So that Harry Reid, they want to go behind closed doors and negotiate. And that's a big problem. And one thing in the House, we came in there and we said we're going to have a more open, transparent, accountable process in the House. And one thing we've been doing in the House, which didn't happen under Nancy Pelosi, we have what we call an open rule. And when the bills come up, any member can introduce amendments. I have voted well over 1,000 amendments. It's just incredible amendments we voted on this last year. So there's lots of fodder out there for everybody, I tell you. But the process is open. Under Nancy Pelosi, everything was decided behind closed doors, and then when it came to the floor, it was a closed rule, no amendments would be offered. And they spent more time voting on post office names than anything else. And so that's just a huge problem. We also passed out of the House this year, we classify them as bills to improve the business climate here in the United States. We've identified 30 bills. 2 of them are mine. We've sent them over to the Senate, and they just ain't going to get here, nothing. And another example, next week, I've been working hard on the Transportation Infrastructure Committee. Next week, we're going to have the Highway Surface Transportation Bill on the floor. It's a 5-year bill. It's been 8 years since the bill's been passed. The last bill was passed, it has 6,371 earmarks. This bill has 0 earmarks. And it has no new taxes. Here's where it's going to get real interesting. It does a couple other great things, in my opinion. It essentially blocks grants money to the states and lets the states make the decision how to use their highway tax dollars, our gas tax dollars. It also streamlines the process, so it gives the states the flexibility, the ability to set the environmental standards and policies and permits and take it away from that bureaucracy in Washington. So it gives states more flexibility. But the interesting thing is that the 18.4 cents we pay for gas tax from the federal level, it's about 29 in the state. That raises about $35 billion a year annually. Where this bill is $52 billion a year, 5 years, $260 billion. Okay, and how our bill that we're proposing pays for that additional money invested in highways infrastructure is encourages new development on federal lands of oil and gas. Onward up in Alaska and offshore. And so a part of those royalties and leases will come to help fund infrastructure, which to me, I think makes a heck of a lot of sense. We've got huge infrastructure issues in this country, and we got lots of things we can do in this country to raise revenue without raising taxes. Raising taxes is the absolute worst thing we can do. So I would imagine there's going to be a bitter fight. I just can't believe that they want to have more drilling and oil and gas exploration. By the way, I was down in Miami, Florida for one day. My wife goes, "You're going to Miami for one day?" I said, "Yeah, it's not a pleasure trip." But we had a hearing down there because Cuba was 2 weeks ago now. The Spanish company just moved in a rig to drill off Cuba, 45 miles from Florida coast, in deeper water than the Deepwater Horizon, the BP issue. And they did allow, this is interesting, they did allow the United States Coast Guard to inspect the rig before it got there. It had a few problems. They said they would fix them. They will not allow the U.S. Coast Guard now, since the sediment rate started growing, to inspect. One of the problems they had, it could not pass some electrical requirements, electrical systems were not to snuff. And I heard a report last week, they couldn't pass a fire drill safety issue. So the challenge here for us is, we don't have any control over that. And the risk of the Florida coast, especially the eastern Florida coast, is at risk if there's a problem. And it's just kind of blows me away. This administration is restricting our drilling, American companies, but then they can have 45 miles from our coast, and we don't really have anything to say. And you build on that. Can't even get a pipe. We had a Keystone pipeline. Why did you mention that? Well, yeah. I'm talking to the choir here, let me tell you. So I can go on all day about all the crap that's going on. Okay, so let me back up a little bit here. I'm glad you guys all came out today on a snowy day, because that means there's a problem. We got a huge issue to fix, and there is consequences of elections, and unfortunately we're experiencing that. This guy's raised close to $5 trillion in new debt since he's been in office. They're trying to circumvent Congress by, on the regulatory side, by administrative rule, by executive orders, by lawsuits. Some of the lawsuits against the US EPA, I think, are designed and probably funded by the US EPA. We're actually doing a little investigation of that. I chair a subcommittee in Transportation and Infrastructure. It's called Water Resources and Environment. And it's really a privilege because it kind of fell in my lap. Not too many freshmen chair subcommittees, but it was interesting because this subcommittee has a lot of jurisdiction. And this committee has jurisdiction over the Army Corps of Engineers, and it's the only committee in the House that has jurisdiction over the Army Corps of Engineers. So that means I'm working with the Corps for all the inland waterway system, Ohio River, Columbia, Mississippi, the levees and the dams, and locks. I want to say locks. And also all the ports in the United States and the Great Lakes. And we have some other areas too. And then also we have jurisdiction over the EPA, the Elimination of Productive Activity Agency, on the water side. Okay? And I've held numerous hearings and passed 2 bills out, and of course those 2 of those 30 I talked about, they're sitting over in the United States Senate, being moldy. And what says on the water side, you know, I don't think I'm Lisa Jackson's most favorite person, but she's just incredible. And you know, things that the US EPA is trying to do. And so we've had a lot of hearings on that, and we've got more planned. And then right now, one of the bills I'm working on, I'm hoping we're going to hear in February 28th to deal with, talking about infrastructure issues. You know, we have huge infrastructure issues. So, almost every village, municipality, metropolitan area is under some type of EPA edict for water and sewer. And so I'm working on a bill to help bring in a private partnership money to lower the interest rates to you know, City of Medina, Lodi, whoever's doing this. New York City, got, you know, declined sewers, all kinds of issues, and that's something we're working on to help do that. But that's something I'm working on. But on the big picture, I think there's 4 things, if we could get this done, that this economy would take off. And if we don't have economic freedom, economic opportunities, we lose our constitutional freedoms. It's so clear. And it's also, you know, it's a national security issue. And you're starting to see it. It's just $1.5 trillion annual deficits and this mountain of debt we're piling up. You're starting to see, you know, I'm really concerned because defense is starting to take some serious cuts, almost $500 billion right now, $50 billion a year. So we have so much of the federal spending now going into the entitlement side and interest, and if we don't get this under control, interest is a compound effect, goes through the roof in a few years, and then it is, I think, irreversible or serious issues. And so you're seeing things that what's made this country great is our ability to do things, and now that those resources are getting limited and not being, you know, NASA's a good example, defense. And it's going to these other things that aren't investments in our future and you know, going to make us not the world leader that we've been. And so what we have to do, we have so much uncertainty coming out of Washington, D.C. And everybody's kind of sitting on the sidelines. This economy is just kind of stagnant. Really, after the deep recession that we experienced, which we're probably still in a recession, but that, you know, we've gone through, we should have rebounded out with strength. That's how it usually works. And we're just kind of stagnating along because of all this uncertainty. And one of the things, if you look at the corporations, the amount of cash they're sitting on it, and everybody, they're afraid to risk it. They're afraid to invest it. They're afraid to hire people because they don't have confidence in the future because it could get worse. Very much worse, as we know, with this mountain of debt. So, number one, we have to get the deficit spending headed south. Get this under control. It's like a wet blanket over the economy. It's suffocating us. Number two, we've got to have common sense regulatory reforms. And I can go on all night talking about all the regulatory nonsense. It's EPA, it's Dodd-Frank. I mean, this Dodd-Frank legislation, our community banks have been getting hammered. It's just not right. You know, you talk about these bailouts and deals. You know, a lot of people think that the Republican, the Democrats are helping the middle class, you know, doing everything for the middle class. You know what? You're absolutely right. They're not. They bail out the big guys and they give them waivers. You know, how many waivers? I forget the number of kind of waivers we're up now for the bail out the unions and all that. They do the bailouts. They bail out Wall Street. They bail out the big banks, and the little banks, for in this example, are paying the price, get hammered, and then plus businesses, small, medium-sized businesses, their credit has been severely reduced, even though they might have good credit, because it's just totally out of control. On the EPA side, I'll tell you, it's unbelievable. Businesses, you know, the delay in permits and all that, and they don't know what's coming down next. And I'll give you a quick example. Probably this has to be the number one example of how this administration is totally out of control. In '07, there was a company over in West Virginia, a coal mining company, that went through 10 years of doing an environmental impact study, okay? Went far beyond what they needed to do. And in '07, the Army Corps of Engineers and the US EPA granted their permits, to permit to install NPS, all those permits they have to have. This company invested over $100 million, okay, start the operation up. In '10, when this administration came in, they came in and revoked their permits. They shut them down. They did not shut them down because there was a problem or they were in violation of permits. They shut them down mainly because they had an agenda. And I was all over Lisa Jackson in committee. She's a US EPA administrator. And I said to her, I said, what authority did you have to revoke those permits? Because this has never happened in the history of our country, revoking permits for not being in violation. She said the Clean Water Act. And I said, no. The Clean Water Act gives you the authority to veto a permit during the application process. Like when it's going up through the Corps, they can step in and say, no, we're vetoing this. So my next question to her, I said, well, why did the EPA veto it in '07 when they had the legal authority to do it? You know what she said? Well, that was the Bush administration. We had to do it when we got in. Clearly a political agenda. And that's actually helping the lawsuit, that statement, I'm told. So, but think about this. Think about this. Think about this. How many businesses, entities, have to have a permit from the government to be in business? Okay? And when you set this dangerous precedent that a business can, a bureaucrat or administration can come in and pull your permits with no due cause. And I'll give you an example why there was no due cause. The West Virginia EPA testified that there was not in violation and they did not support the US EPA's actions. The Army Corps of Engineers testified that there was no violations, and they still did. So who's gonna, what banks are gonna loan money, who's gonna put capital, or who's gonna risk capital in an operation that knowing you're in business because the government has permitted you, and if they can pull that permit, that stifles economic activity, and you know, you just go across the board, all the dangers in that. So we need, you know, in a free market society, we do need some regulations, but they gotta make sense and be common sense and make the playing field. Yeah.
When you have a situation like that, when it's never happened before, and your Army Corps of Engineers are in support, and so is your state regulation, why don't they act on states' rights issue and say, that we're not listening to this, while we fight it? It seems to be, it looks to me like in so many different arenas, we get shut down with recess appointments, we get shut down because or the challenge to gay marriage, oh, well, there's a precedent, they get those rights, now you can't take them away. Why don't they do that? Why don't we think as deviously as they do when we know we're morally right?
That's a great comment. You know, obviously this company's filed a lawsuit, you know, so they're going to battle out in the courts.
But why do they stop? Why do they stop their work?
I can't answer that.
Yeah, it seems like, she's right, it seems like this side always.
You want something back there, you're waiting?
Yeah. I wanted to ask you is, you're talking about how you're trying to keep spending down, and how do you do that without a budget?
I'm glad, great question, great question.
Not for 1 year.
Okay, the question was.
It's been 1,000 days, right?
Yeah, I was gonna mention that. The question was, how do we keep spending down without a budget? That's a great question, and I'll follow through on that. On the CRs, the continuing resolutions, that's how this Congress, up until now, have been operating, okay? Well, they still are operating because the Senate's blocking us. I like a CR is fine if you're doing a budget and you need a few more days to get the paperwork done and you know, keep things running. But you don't do these CRs for years and years and years. And the United States Senate has not passed a budget now in over 1,000 days, 3 years. And they just announced last week that they're not gonna pass the budget for this coming fiscal year, October 1.
And all we do is count the days.
Now we're counting the days, that's right. And I'll give you a couple examples why it's so bad when you don't pass the budget, you don't pass the appropriation bills. We did finally last week, or 2 weeks ago now, we passed the FAA reauthorization bill, okay? We had, I think, 22, maybe 23 CRs. About 19 were done before this Congress started. And it was like I forget how many years, since 5 or 6, I think so, more than 5 years, where they didn't have the bill. So the problem is, when you don't have these long-term bills, like we're trying to do the 5-year transportation bill, that brings certainty, and it helps states know what's coming, it helps the local contractors know what's coming. I've actually had contractors here in Ohio tell me that they had to quit buying new equipment because they didn't know what was gonna happen in the transportation bill, because they can't plan. So an FAA is a perfect example. We are falling behind because we're not adopting new satellite technology for air traffic control because they didn't have a long-term plan, make CR systems. And hold on a second, and then if you, a good example is on the transportation bill. Here's what Barbara Boxer's doing in the Senate. She wants to pass a 2-year transportation bill at a 2-year cost of $109 billion. Remember I said gas taxes bring in $35 billion a year, so $70 billion. They don't have any plan how to fund the balance, okay? And a 2-year bill, and so at the end of the 2 years, the highway trust fund would be flat broke. And so, you know, it's just unbelievable how they operate over there. And so anyways, back to the budget. You know, we passed the budget. Like I said, it sat, the Senate didn't take it up. We're starting now to work on our budget for starting the fiscal year October 1. The President's going to be a week or so late. He's supposed to have his budget to Congress here, I think, Monday. So we'll see what his budget. Now remember, his last budget that he introduced last year, to our new Congress last year, it failed in the Senate 97-0. His budget in the Democrat Senate. So you know, it's just rather unbelievable. Before you get to questions, I want to finish up my 4 points. Okay, so common sense regulations, and we can talk some more about that. Third thing, we need to have tax reform that is pro-growth. You know, right now we've got come April 1st, we will have the highest corporate income tax rate in the world. Japan, I guess, is lowering theirs finally. So there's lots of things. We've got companies that are, American companies that do business overseas, they can't bring those profits back, they pay taxes overseas, and they pay 35% over here. That's a real good incentive to bring money back over here and invest. And guess what? If you don't have capital to invest, you can't grow jobs. And number 4, we have to have an energy policy that encourages the responsible development of our own resources. And we have a lot of resources in the United States, and if you add Canada to that, North America, we have enough oil.